G'day everyone, Tim here again. I was just writing my blog post about improvising and teaching kids how to start improvising, and thought again probably the best way is to show you what I actually do with students, and it might be something that you can do with your students if you don't already do any improvising with them. And it's actually quite easy to get started as long as you introduce the concepts of the primary triads reasonably early on, and as long as students can play the primary triads, they can start improvising in a basic way. So normally what I explain to students is using the circle of fifths, the concept of your centre key, let's say C major, one chord to the left, one chord to the right, those are your three primary triads, and then the relative minors of those three chords are your kind of secondary triads, and all six of those chords will work when you improvise. I then explain to them that the most standard progression in all of music is the 1-4-5-1 progression. So from C to F to G and back to C. And there's plenty of examples out there of songs which are made up of only those chords. In the jungle, the quiet jungle, the light seems to know, is just the one chord and the four chord and the one chord and the five chord. You could probably think of a million more. There's YouTube clips about songs made up of four chords, and that's only three, and there's plenty of those out there as well. So they can get a feeling for the fact that three chords make musical sense. So I get them normally first off just to play chords in the right hand, triads in the right hand, octaves in the left, hold them each for 4 counts like this. And if they can do that, they've effectively composed their first simple piece of music in the key of C major. But we then talk about why that might not sound all that interesting, and we get onto a discussion of what things we can do in either hand to give more movement to the piece. The structure that I like to use most is root 5 and octave, or root 5 root pattern in the left hand, which is commonly used in a lot of pop and film music these days. So that's just the lower C, the fifth of each of the chords, the G, and then the upper root or the octave. So if the student has hands big enough, this is a great pattern to use with the pedal. So we can then try doing 2 of these on each of the chords, just holding the chords in the right hand again. Instantly you can hear that it sounds a lot more interesting. However, the right hand's now really letting us down. So what I then like to do is challenge the students to pick any one note, and we normally talk about, well, what note do we know in the right hand will work with this first chord in the left, and they can normally tell that C, E or G, the 3 notes of the triad, are the best notes to start on, and we need to go back and finish on preferably one of those notes as well to make it sound finished. So I then say, okay, we're working up in the octave above middle C, pick a starting note, and for each of the 4 chords, the F, the G, the C, F, G, and back to the C, you can only pick one other note. You can only play one other note in your right hand, and it has to be a note next door to one of the ones you're starting on. So they'll play something like this. That resolve to there, so I'll finish that off before I stop playing. And that gets us onto a talk about, well, what happens if you do choose a G with your left hand F chord? It's not that it's wrong, in fact it just adds tension, which you can then resolve on the second time you play the left hand in that same chord. And you only have pretty much one note away from the resolve, is what I normally tell students. Or perhaps they finish on this note, and you go, oh, that's a bit awkward, why don't we just go up 1, and then they can get the idea of that as well. So that's just one note in the right hand, simple chords in the left hand. It's about that time that I generally then add the first of the secondary important triads, so the A minor, the relative minor of the key, because that then opens up a whole new world of sound, and the students tend to love that. So we could do something like this. I normally write these chords out as a base point for them to start. So we'll start with C, same thing in the right hand. composed a pretty nice piece in the key of C major already. That would kind of be for a lower intermediate level student. That would be an introductory part in one lesson, maybe 5 to 8 minutes or something like that. Because I will have already talked about primary triads and those structures being most important, the most important chords, how they work and things. So it's really then just giving them a tool to use in the left hand, which makes it sound interesting, and then a really rigid structure in the right hand that they can use to do melodies without too many options. So it's better saying, I think, just one note at a time in the right hand than saying you can use any note and go for it, because it's too overwhelming. And funnily enough, the simple things often sound better. After that, the next thing to add to it is the D minor chord and the E minor chord, and I normally let students work out where they go. And then, as per my blog post, you can change any manner of things, so you can give them options to use more than one note at a time in the right hand. Thirds, sixths sound awesome as well. If they know their scales in C major, then they can easily do this. The other pattern that I really like introducing to students, if they've got hands big enough, is the root, fifth, and the third of the triad. So that's C, G, and E, and this is used a lot in pop music and film music as well. Sometimes they make a mistake and they play this chord, and I go, yes, brilliant, that sounds even better, so why don't we go... and we can experiment with that as well. And I've had students come back after maybe a couple of weeks and be able to do something like that, and the success of being able to do that and make it up and not have to look at any music is just fantastic. I reckon it's a great way to start lessons too. It's probably one of the most musical things you can do. There's no fear of reading notes on a page or getting anything wrong. It's just fun and musical. For kids with small hands too, sometimes just getting them to start with a simple triad pattern in the left hand will work just as well as this one. Maybe not sound quite as cool, but still really good. So just an up and down the broken triad. Or if they like classical music, you can give them our Alberti bass pattern. As well. So there's a few different options for how you can introduce improvising to students in your studio. Fantastically musical experience for them, and it will help with sight reading, help with pop music, chord reading, everything. Really great thing to do. So anyway, leave questions if you've got any. Happy to help answer them. Thanks.